Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Director and video game writer Jeffrey Yohalem is today's guest. Jeffrey will talk about how he got his start in video game writing, as well as his many exciting projects.
Jeffrey Yohalem, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So good to have you, Jeffrey. Now, and I've been seeing video games for many, many, many years. I'm a little bit older than you, if you hadn't noticed, but I don't want to brag, but I could have done the writing for the show for the game Pong. Boop, boop. That's what I would have needed. So things have changed a little bit since then. So I have to ask you, I want to go way back. Did your love of writing start with something other than video games?
No, actually, I walked into a Radio Shack when I was about 7, and there was a game called Prince of Persia that was being demoed inside the store, and I played it, and that was it. I was gone. Like that was my dream from then on, pretty much. Wow.
First of all, you had me at Radio Shack. That's where I got all my recordings and everything, all my electronic devices back in the day. Okay, so besides that game, what video games did you like to play as a youngster? And more importantly, why?
So my parents wouldn't let me have consoles, so I was playing on PC. And PC games were sort of more cerebral. So like adventure games, I was playing Myst when it came out for the first time. That was incredible. Things like King's Quest, Space Quest, Police Quest, all the Sierra games. And then eventually LucasArts games like Escape from Monkey Island. So basically they were games where you kind of solve puzzles or explore worlds and try to like move the story along through your actions.
Right. Well, as a parent, and I did teach for over 30 years, I have my own philosophy. I'm interested in hearing yours. So there are many acts of violence in certain games, but for me, I never thought that a video game could really control a young person's mind that way if they had the parents who were emphasizing certain other philosophies and beliefs in the house. So what are your thoughts on some of the games? And some of them are violent, but what are your thoughts on the different action, the different language involved?
I think that most of gameplay is sort of a metaphor and it sits below the surface, that it's not literal. So we call it the 30-second gameplay loop, but if that's shooting people, I think if you grow up, especially playing video games, you don't experience that. You don't even really think about it. It's the action that you're doing that keeps you immersed in the game. And then everything else is what you're thinking about. And so I don't think that it registers as akin to committing a violent act in reality. Now, all of that said, I do think that some of what is holding video games back in terms of being powerful metaphors at the level of, something like opera or film is that 30-second gameplay loop. If it's like a B movie, a B movie would be where you're killing hundreds of people. And so I think that does register on some level, and that if we can find 30-second gameplay loops that are more A-level, that, for instance, once VR becomes big, if you're only killing like 1 or 2 people and you spend the whole game doing it and it's incredibly disturbing and not treated as something that happens below the surface, I think that could be really interesting. And, games where you're farming or games where you're exploring under the sea, like Dave the Diver. I think recently there have been games that are trying to figure out compelling loops that don't involve violence.
Interesting, because there's so many other things to the storytelling and the gaming. I'm most interested in, quite honestly, this phenomenon of back in the day, we played against the machine, end of story. And now people can play against other people all over the world. So what do you think about that reach that video games have had the past X number of years?
I mean, it really is bringing people together. And heard of level. Like League of Legends is like the national sport of South Korea, I believe. And so, these are very serious competitive games, and people really love them. And so I think anything that brings us together in this world that's feeling increasingly isolated is really good for people.
Right. And yeah, it really does spread all over the world. And we certainly need it now. Case in point, I was able to interview Gerard Williams, who's known as the hip hop gamer from New York. And I know he does some work with Denzel Washington. Denzel always gives back to Mount Vernon and the area where he lived. And there's a lot of things with gaming in schools and money being donated by different celebrities and different organizations. So what are the benefits of gaming? Originally, people have just said, oh, great hand and eye coordination, but it goes so much deeper than that. So what do you, as a lover of literature, we'll get into that in a moment, what do you see as some major benefits of the gaming industry, and most specifically some of the games you've been involved with?
So I think adventure games overall as a genre teach you that no matter what obstacles you face, there's a way through them. And there's like unexpected ways through them that you have to really think outside the box to get through them. But I think that message has really carried over to my whole life. That whenever I encounter an obstacle to accomplishing something, I never once think about giving up, because I know that there is no such thing as game over, that there is a way to get that money to fund that particular thing, or there's a way to fix this problem so that everyone is happy, or there's a way to plan this so that the delivery happens on the right day. And that, there are so many possibilities in our world, if you can imagine it, as possible. And so, it really teaches you to think about solutions. And that's been invaluable. Changed my life. So that's just that genre. I think that also, again, being able to have a dialogue with a brilliant creator is invaluable. I also think there's something to it being more like community theater, that people want to act, but they feel nervous about that. Some people, they don't want to do it professionally. And so just like karaoke, I think in games, you can perform as characters in a safe space. So it gives you an outlet for expression. So there's all these wonderful things I think that games give us.
So when we talk about, if somebody said to me, and I'll have a very different answer after today, that's why I'm so excited. Oh, you interviewed someone who's a game show writer. What does that really mean? I don't believe the average gamer, the average person knows what that means or even looks like. Could you kind of encapsulate that for us?
Well, I'm a video game writer, or kind of the equivalent of a showrunner for video games. So what that means is that I work with a team. It's usually around 8 people. It's like the game design director, the level design director, the creative director, the lead programmer, and others, to create a world, and I'm the one in charge of the story. And personally, I've written a lot of the games that I worked on, but you don't have to in that role. It can depend on the person. And, my goal is to hear, the kind of stuff that the art director is interested in, that the creative director is interested in, and really figure out a story that wraps around all of that. It really is a collaborative medium, and I think it's the most collaborative medium in history. It used to be opera was, because it involves so many different disciplines, but now games have even more. And so I love, again, that the challenge to creativity. There's all these limitations because, you have a group of people working on this game, and each of them has something that they are in love with that makes them excited. And you want to take all of those loves and transform them into a story and a world that holds them. So, but you can encounter limitations, like marketing wants to name the game a certain thing. And so you have to think about, what does this name mean in terms of the context of this game? So there's all kinds of interesting limitations. But then, after we've decided what the game is going to be, then I go and write that in, and I partner with level designers, I partner with game designers, because throughout the game, you're learning how to play, or there's new ingredients added that you get to experience. And so I'm incorporating all of those into the story. So I'm really working one-on-one with all the different members of the team that are working on each piece of the game to craft a story that works for that particular sequence. And I'm very gameplay first. So, which again, we'll show in the reviews, like you can have a game with an incredible story, but the gameplay is bad and the reviews are not going to be good and people won't buy it. But if you have a game with incredible gameplay and a silly story, it still does really, really well. So gameplay is, the core of this medium. And so to me, it's like, I never want my story to get in the way of something fun that a level designer or a game designer is creating. So it's really my job to make sure that that the story is highlighting, I guess, how fun all the other stuff is.
Wow, whoever thought that there was so much involved, but at the end of the day, this is a business and you've made it a career. What happens? What does it look like when you present something? Because I feel a lot of the younger people now, this younger generation doesn't always handle constructive criticism well. And I've given workshops on how to give constructive criticism. Sometimes people don't do that equally well. But the question is, what happens when something you show or write doesn't quite match the vision of some of the other team members? What does that look like? And how does the alterations, how does that take place? And what does that look like?
We all give each other notes. And you just have to, if you have an issue with a note, you can discuss it with the person, but often, you need to see something from the perspective of the other disciplines. And so that's what the notes are about, where it's like, oh, I see why this doesn't work. This thing that I was interested in doesn't work. And I think one of the biggest challenges in games, and it's something that I think every writer struggles with, is you have to earn the space to have a scene or to have a lot of talking. And a lot of writers, I think, in games don't earn that space, again, because you're taking away from the player being able to play to try to communicate some beautiful thing that you've written. And the reality is, like, again, 99% of things written are not worthy, I think, of taking time away from playing. And so either you have to find a way to communicate what you want to communicate through play. And I think that's the frontier of video game narrative. And that's what I'm interested in, which is, how does a sequence of shooting here act as a metaphor to say something or create a particular emotion? And that's, I think, the building blocks of storytelling in games, as opposed to, like, is this beautiful passage, this monologue that I've written, is it going to be accepted by players? And so often you get notes like, oh, this is too long, like this is too much time without playing, or that this needs to go more into explaining this particular gameplay than it goes into character building. I mean, because that's always the challenge too, is that, really each scene should be about a particular gameplay. It's like, oh, shoot, the lights went off in the ship, so now we have to go through the ship in the dark. So now you need a flashlight and there's going to be like dark monsters that can attack you. That's the point of the scene. And anything else, like character building in there, needs to fit in with all of that and not take up too much time. And, Shakespeare had to deal and grapple with the same stuff. We talked about this in writing class all the time. It's exposition versus character, that you have to do both. And exposition is boring, actually, but that's the thing that drives the plot forward. And then character, you have to figure out how to make exposition also communicate character. And if so, you win.
Yes, characterization is so important, but I find it almost comedic. I mean, it's just so interesting what you just said. I taught English for over 30 years, and in some of the plays, murders took place off stage because you can see backstage. Just in Macbeth, I remember a young boy was stabbed with a sword, killed with a sword, and it takes place backstage, and the line is, "They have killed me, mother." And my students, like, they couldn't believe that. And I did some research, and obviously it's more alive in your head when you have to imagine how this murder take place than just a gratuitous, for lack of a better term, killing scene on stage. And characterization is so important, but I love the fact that you brought up Shakespeare, because let's talk literature. I mean, I taught English, as I said, for over 3 decades, but I don't, and I'm going to get it from the horse's mouth. If somebody told me, and I've tutored people for years, an SAT prep, ACT prep, but when I hear Yale University graduate with a degree in literature, I don't think successful, outstanding video game writer. So you need to spill the secret. How did we go from sitting in Yale University with this English literature degree, from there into some of these other games? How did that connect?
Well, it's probably because when I was doing my senior thesis with Harold Bloom, I went in and I said, I want my thesis to be about Romeo and Juliet and how Juliet has never loved Romeo and he takes advantage of her. And he told me to get out of his house. And so that was it. That was the end of my English literature career. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding about that. But I went back. I spent the whole seminar. I did a different topic. I still think that Juliet was taken advantage of by Romeo, though. But he said that that's modern children today and that is the purest love of all time and that I just can't understand it from their perspective at that time period. But I don't know. I think she's very, the fact that Romeo was with Rosalind at the beginning and then he jumps over to Juliet and she keeps asking, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Throughout. I don't know. I think he love bombs her and there's all this stuff going on there. But like I told you, since I was 7, I wanted to write video games. And so I saw this as building the greatest, arsenal to be able to do that I wanted to train with the best people. I wanted to pursue the best course of study in order to do that job. And so the guy who created the game Prince of Persia, Jordan Mechner, he also went to Yale and he coded that game in his dorm room there. And so I went there because he went there and then he gave me some advice about what to take. And he told me to take architecture classes and English lit classes. And that's what I did because there was no video game studies program there.
Wow. That's incredible. And because you really honed your craft in college, and honing your craft in college for video games is not something people would normally put together. How amazing for you to be able to do that. And thank God you had a great mentor. But I want to do a little name dropping here. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Vegas 2, Assassin's Creed 2, before writing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Far Cry 3, Child of Light, and Syndicate. These are games that everybody knows. What do you call upon to make your writing so powerful in these games? Where does that knowledge bank come from?
It's usually something going on in the world or something that I read that really electrifies me and feels like something that needs to be out there, that needs to be said. Like Far Cry 3, there was an article I read I think it was called Liking is for Cowards, Go for What Hurts. But it was an analysis of how Siri and various electronic devices give you back this kind of endless positivity. But in fact, because they don't stand up to you or challenge you, it's like it's causing you to be caught kind of in a mirror where you can't see reality anymore. And that hadn't really resonated with me. And so I felt like making a game about how video games give the players what they want and keep giving them what they want, that eventually you can kind of choke on that that a candy bar that's so sweet, that's so perfect, it causes you to throw up, that there's a way to make something challenging, challenging players to look at why they want, what it means to want a 30-second gameplay loop that involves all this killing, what it means to be addicted to a video game. And, what are you running away from in your own life? And so that was sort of the grain of sand in the middle of that game that led to all the rest of it. And so for me, it's really about, I need to write something that holds my interest. I think this is true of writers in a lot of disciplines too. It's that you have a really high bar of what's interesting. Otherwise you could go do another job that makes like a lot more money. And so the reason you're a writer, the reason you're in the arts is because you want to be interested at all times in your life. You want to be engaged at all times in your life. And so you have to make sure that whatever you're working on is engaging or you can't do it.
Phenomenal philosophy. And I have to tell you, I'm a little jealous because I wish that I was still teaching, because I'd be bringing you in on Zoom and saying, we're going to hear a little different take on Romeo and Juliet. And just the way you take things and the way you say things is so incredible. But this success definitely did not happen overnight. And what I like to focus on my show is we often talk about the story behind the glory. So what obstacles did you have to overcome to become successful in your field?
I think especially in video games, everyone's path in is unique. So you really don't know what you're doing. And there really aren't many or any mentors. So, Jordan helped me, but he didn't give me advice about how to deal with certain problems. And even the writer I was working with, the guy, Corey May, who did Assassin's Creed 1, and 2 with me, we worked together on 2, and we've worked together for many years. I kept looking to him for advice or for, teach me how to do this. And he just said the only piece of advice I think he ever gave me was don't repeat the same word in the same sentence or in the same general area, which is a great piece of advice. It challenges you to really think about your lexicon. And in fact, it's a great tool, but I kept looking for someone who had more answers, and no one does. Because this is such a new medium, everyone is kind of feeling around in the dark, trying to figure out where we go next. And it's essential. You can't keep making the same thing over and over again, or the business will fall apart. And so it really is, you are being paid to be an explorer, to really go out there and find something new and then teach other people on the team how to make that. So I think that the biggest challenge is that you have to follow your own lead and at the same time be careful about politics, because you're in this great collaborative medium. And I think film and TV is worse in terms of what you can do wrong in that kind of a situation if you're up and coming and you're coming in. But I think it's also clearer there where the landmines are. You're sort of told very explicitly by the whole system, this is the person you can't say anything to like this, and this is how they are, and don't tiptoe around that line. You have to be really careful. In games, there's like none of that, but I think it's all going on beneath the surface. And so you have to be very careful to make sure that you don't upset the wrong person,
right?
And there are a lot of people who think differently and neurodivergent people, and so you have to really use lots of empathy. And I think focusing on the end goal really got me through it, which was, I want to make an incredible game that really moves players. And I'm always thinking about players. And so keeping my focus on the players, I'm willing to throw myself under the bus in order to make a game better so that players will like it more. And I think that saved me a lot in my career, because my goal was not to be promoted or to be in charge of this thing. It was to make the best game possible. And so I think attention really, really matters.
Oh, for sure. And just very quickly, it's funny, I've helped kids with college essays as part of my tutoring business. And I swear to you, I almost laughed because I've told them, don't use the same word in the same sentence or the same general area. So it's so interesting that was some advice you got also. And you talk about your goals and you're so into the experience of the gamer. But what you're not necessarily, when I'm not hearing, I don't think you do this with the goal of awards, but you did win the Writers Guild Award as, I think, the lead writer of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. So what was that like for you? Because clearly I don't think that was in your mind at all. And I don't think when you do these things, but to get those kind of accolades, what does that do for you as the game writer?
That was one thing that I really did want, because growing up, I felt like video games weren't getting enough respect. And that, again, at Yale and other big, top tier establishments, there were, they treated them as things for kids. And I was playing all this stuff that I felt was incredibly adult and interesting. And so my goal coming in was always to bring that level of subtext and high art and seriousness so that we would be recognized by that world. So in some ways it was a little bit of a goal. And so getting that award really felt like a vindication of that, that oh, finally the establishment is taking video games seriously. And, my processes helped with that. So that night felt like, it was just miraculous, like the showrunner of Mad Men rolled down the window of his limo when I was walking up to Chateau Marmont for the after party and said, I loved your speech. So, that was just amazing. But at the same time, that night, I kept hearing from people, oh, my kids play games. It's so great that you won this. They'll understand what this is about and not me. And so there was still a lot of, even though it felt like, now this acknowledgement is there, my interaction with the vast majority of people, it still felt like, oh, nothing really changed that much. And I think that has really been my takeaway from that moment. It was this incredible night, and it felt like this everything had changed, but in reality, it hadn't. And, awards are great because it makes you feel like you're getting acknowledgement from your peers. But at the same time, they don't change anything. And, it really is the work that is exciting. And then seeing, like, going to PAX, which is a big, consumer game show,
right.
like a I guess you'd call it a con or something, and
right.
Seeing all the players who loved the game that you made, that actually felt tremendously better ultimately.
Wow, that's phenomenal. To finally get that vindication, as you say, is just phenomenal. But the time has flown. But Jeffrey Yohalem, thank you for being today's guest and sharing this incredible journey with us. For all the viewers watching, I hope Jeffrey's journey has shown you that following your passion as he did can take you places you never thought possible. We love to hear from you, so stay connected with us on social media. Find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Don't forget to like us and follow us for the latest episode updates and exciting new content. Jeffrey Yohalem, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.